back to Falcon Notes. I'm Sakali, and we're going to be going over Unit 4 of Human Geography, which happens to be Political Geography. Political Geography is all about how politics can fit into geography and vocabulary like gerrymandering. And we're going to be going over shapes of states, nations versus states, core versus periphery, supranationalism, boundaries, redistricting process, devolution, which was a big one, by the way. And yeah, that's about it. So let's get right into. So a nation is a tightly knit group of people sharing a common language, ethnicity, religion, and other cultural attributes. So a nation could be not necessarily a physical place like the America. America itself, without the United States, could be a nation, but we're a nation-state, state being political, organized territory administered by a sovereign government with a permanent population and recognized by the international community. Yeah, so what that's saying is a state is basically the physical form of something. So, it's the physical land that is ruled by a nation, making a nation-state a state whose population possesses a substantial degree of cultural homogeneity and unity, like the United States. For example, a stateless nation is a nation without a state. Like I said before, this could happen because nation is just the group of people. Like an example would be the Palestinians. They didn't have an actual country. They don't have Palestine, which is not a country. They don't have one, but they are a nation. A multinational state is a country with two or more nationalities within its borders. Okay, this is a better example of the United States because the United States is very diverse wherever you go in the United States. And a multi-state nation is a nation that transcends the borders of two or more states, like the Kurds or the Kurdistan and the Koreas, like North and South Korea. They're still the same country, but they have two borders. After that, we go into shapes of states. We talked about compacted, which is distance from geometric center is similar, so it's like kind of like a circle or compacted into a smaller ball, like Germany or Hungary. Elongated is attenuated, like Chile or Vietnam, because they're very long and narrow. That's what elongated is. Fragmented is when there's two or more separate pieces. An example of this would be the Philippines, which has like 200 islands, and places like Indonesia. They're not completely all together. There's water in between them. Perforated is a territory that completely surrounds that of another state, like Italy or Azerbaijan. Yeah. And protruded or prorrupt have an area that extends from a compact core. Bifurcated has two distinct territories. A microstate is a state or nation that is small in both population and area, like Vatican City or Monaco. An exclave is bounded territory that is part of a state but is separated by the territory of another state. An enclave is a small and relatively homogeneous group of region surrounded by a larger and different group of region. And a landlocked state is a state that has no access to the ocean or to the sea because it's covered with other land that's surrounding it from the ocean. After that, we go into core versus periphery. We use this the whole rest of the class actually, so you might want to know this now sooner than later. So core countries are countries that have higher developments and a capacity at innovation and convergence of trade flows. So like the United States is a core country because it's very developed and it has trading routes with other countries like Canada and Mexico, stuff like that. Periphery countries usually have less development and are usually poor countries because a lot of the time development requires money to work. There's a theory called the world systems theory, and it was made by Emanuel Wallerstein's core periphery model, 3-tier structured theory. It proposes that social change in the developing world is linked to the economic activities of the developed world. Look it up yourself. It's called the World Systems Theory. First world. Okay. So we say a lot of things like, oh, that's a first world country, or back in third world countries. This refers to more of the development levels of countries. So a first world country would be the largely demographic and free market the largest democratic and free market states of the United States and Western Europe. The second world is the communist and state-planned countries of the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and China. And the third world are the generally poorer countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So after that, we go into supranationalism. Supranationalism is a venture of 3 or more states, involving formal economic, political, and/or cultural cooperation to promote shared objects. For an example, the United Nations, established at the end of World War II to foster international security and cooperation. Precursor was the League of Nations that went defunct at the beginning of World War II. And it has many subsidiaries, such as the Security Council and the World Health Organization. The European Union is a union of 27 democratic member states of Europe and began with the formation of Benelux by the end of World War II. So these are made so that they can easily trade and do stuff like that, because they have kind of an alliance of some sorts. Like the European Union, they all have the same money system, so that it's easier for them to pay things like euros, so you don't have to switch them out and stuff like that. NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is a military alliance of Western democracies and begun in 1949 with 28 member states today. Its members agree to mutual defense in response to an attack by any external party. In this one, for example, they have a treaty where they help each other fend off outside threats and stuff like that. The North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, is a trilateral trade bloc in North America created by the governments of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Poverty rates have fallen and real incomes have risen in Mexico, but farmers haven't fared well due to cheaper food from U.S. agribusiness. Also, U.S. manufacturing workers have lost jobs to maquiladora plants in Mexico, mostly due to cheaper labor costs. So NAFTA provides trade help between Canada, North America, and Mexico. So now they're very connected with the roads for trade because it's easier to trade. Next is boundaries. Annexation is incorporation of a territory into another geopolitical entity. A boundary is a vertical plane between states that cuts through the rocks below and airspace above. So boundaries are lines that divide us, kind of. Boundaries are things, like it says, it's a line that cuts through the rocks below and airspace above. So if you make a boundary, it's that whole area. It's not, you can jump over a boundary or go underneath a boundary. It doesn't work like that. Now, evolution of boundaries. The definition, legal document or treaty drawn up to specify actual points in the landscape. Delimitation, cartographers put the boundary on the line. Demarcation, boundary is actually marked on the ground with the walls, fence, and posts. Usually it's too expensive or impractical for most borders, but Trump wants to build that wall. So there are many types of boundaries. So there's geometric boundaries, which are straight lines unrelated to physical or cultural landscape, like latitude and longitude. Physical and political boundaries conform to physiological features, like Rio Grande is a border, and stuff like that. Sorry. Cultural political marks breaks in the human landscape, like Armenia and Azerbaijan. Genesis is origins-based classifications of boundaries. Antecedent existed before the cultural landscape emerged. Subsequent developed contemporaneously with the evolution of the cultural landscape. Superimposed, placed by powerful outsiders on a developed landscape, usually ignores pre-existing cultural spatial patterns. Relict has ceased to function, but its imprint can still be detected on the cultural landscape. Now, disputes over boundaries are kind of like squabbles, like I kind of want to say. Definitional is focused on legal language, so median line or of a river or water levels may vary. Locational is the definition is not in dispute. The interpretation allows mapmakers to delimit boundaries in various ways. Operational, neighbors differ over the way the boundary should function, like if they should allow migration and smuggling, like the United States and Mexico. And allocation disputes are disputes over rights to natural resources. Like, an example in this is Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in part due to a dispute over oil rights regarding the Ramallah oil fields. So there you have it. That goes to boundaries, and now we go to the redistricting process. We talked about gerrymandering being the big way of redistricting processes, and it's the process of redrawing legislative boundaries for the purpose of benefiting the political party in power. The process is usually used to turn too close to call states into a party's favor. So usually gerrymandering is not a good thing because they're repurposing for their own advantage. So redistricting this part of the area because they think that they'll get more votes like that, and people have to vote on them, but because they're so close to call, you can't really tell if they're really gerrymandering or not. And I guess it usually works. So yeah, that's not fair. Alright, so now we go into devolution. Now, devolution was a big part of this unit of political geography. For starters, we'll talk about forward capital. Forward capital is a symbolically relocated capital city, usually because of either economic or strategic reasons. Sometimes it's used to integrate outlying parts of a country into a state. Unitary state is a state governed constitutionally as a unit without internal divisions or a federal delegation of powers. A federal state is a state in which a group or body of members are bound together with a governing representative head. Federal states, kind of like presidents and stuff like that, they have a representative head, like it says. Now, the definition of de-evolution, or devolution, is process whereby regions within a state demand and gain political strength and growing autonomy at the expense of a central government. Balkanization is the political term used when referring to the fragmentation of or breakup of a region, country into smaller regions or countries. Balkanization is the political term used when referring to the fragmentation or breakup of a region or country into smaller regions or countries. The term comes from the Balkan Wars, where the country of Yugoslavia was broken up into 6 countries between 1989 and 1992. So Balkanization is like when a country wants to break off of another country, like, can I say North Korea and South Korea? They used to just be Korea, but they wanted to break off because they had such different values and beliefs. Centripetal forces are forces that unify a state. So centripetal forces can be anything from football, which brings us together as a group, to rugby. It's a lot of the time sports, because a lot of people are competitive and sports fans. And centrifugal forces are forces that divide a state. So things like languages, it could bring people together or it could bring people apart, because if they speak different languages, they can't really talk to each other, so it really divides them. Colonialism is the attempt by a country to establish settlements and impose political and economic control and principles, often associated with the European movement beginning in the 16th century, which created unequal cultural and economic relations. Imperialism is the second phase of European colonialism, beginning in the late 18th century. Due to the Second Agricultural Revolution and the Industrial Revolution, can't say that, European states sought colonies for the resources necessary for industrialization, outlets for overpopulation, and markets for their goods. The United States and Japan were also engaged in imperialism, like the Berlin Conference. Decolonization is the movement of American, European, or Asian countries or colonies gaining independence. Some were peaceful struggles while others became violent. Some other key ideas we will be addressing this unit through readings and activities will be things like theocracy, which is a state whose government is either believed to be divinely guided or a state under the control of a group of religious leaders. No, look one up. Geopolitics is the study that analyzes geography, history, and social science with reference to international politics. States can be viewed as living organisms that need to consume other territories to survive. It gained a negative reputation when Hitler and the Nazis embraced geopolitics to justify their rights for their living spaces because of their racial superiority. Yeah, he was a pretty messed up guy. The Heartland theory, made by Halford and Mackinder, was made in the early 20th century. His theory claimed that whichever state controlled the resource-rich heartland of Eastern Europe could eventually dominate the world. It would suggest that not the United Kingdom, but Russia would be in a position to achieve this dominance. Wow. So this basically said that whoever had Eastern Europe could rule the world because it was so, well, it says here that it had so much, it was resource rich, so it had a lot of resources and can eventually take over the world. Rimland theory is a theory that the domination of the coastal fringes of Eurasia would provide the base for world conquest, not the heartland. So yeah, this is just it's just an opposite of the Heartland theory by Nicholas Spikeman in the mid-20th century. Finally, the law of the sea. Its laws establishing states' rights and responsibilities concerning the ownership and use of the Earth's waters and their resources. So this is just all that has to do with talking about the ocean and who gets, how much ocean your state gets, I guess. So territorial sea is states' navigational and economic sovereign territory extending 12 nautical miles from the coast. So foreign ships are allowed innocent passage through it. Sovereignty also extends to the airspace above and seabed below. So basically what this is saying is that territorial sea, each sovereign territory extends 12 nautical miles out into the ocean. The EEZ, or Exclusive Economic Zone, is a sea zone over which a state has special rights over the exploration and use of marine resources stretching 200 nautical miles from the ocean, from the coast. The country that controls the EEZ has rights to fishing, whaling, as well as raw material resources. Finally, the median line principle in situations where there is less than 400 nautical miles. So yeah, the law of the sea is basically just saying who does the ocean belong to and who can use their resources and stuff like that. Well, there you have it, guys. That was Unit 4, Political Geography, in a shortened period of time. If you guys want to see Unit 5, just keep watching, guys, and I will see you next time. All my data comes from the Unit 4 study guide and vocab sheet, as well as the book itself. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.